The inheritance nobody saw coming. Cleopatra Bernard did not inherit peace when her son died. She inherited a war with no finish line. Every morning, she wakes up, surrounded by the proof that XXXTentacion became larger than life, while carrying the private truth that Jahseh Onfroy will never walk through her door again. People see streaming numbers, platinum records, a famous estate, and a beautiful home. What they do not see is the mother behind all of it. Forced to make decisions about music her son never finished, money he never got to spend, and a child he never got to hold. That is why her life cannot be measured by wealth. The real cost is responsibility. One wrong release can anger millions of fans. One legal decision can reopen a family conflict. One public statement can become a headline before she even has time to explain it. And through every argument, every lawsuit, and every anniversary, she still has to protect the name of the son she lost. This story is not about a woman living comfortably from rap money. It is about a mother who had to turn grief into a full-time job. It is about the burden of preserving a legacy while strangers debate whether you are doing it right. And it is about the little boy at the center of everything. Gekyume, growing up with a father the world remembers but he never met. So before we judge Cleopatra Bernard, we have to understand what she was handed on. June 18, it was not just an estate. It was a responsibility powerful enough to define the rest of her life. The world calls it a legacy. For her, it is the unfinished life of her child, arriving every day in a new form. Tell us where you are watching from. Press 1 if you believe protecting a legacy is an act of love. Or press 2 if you think the public deserves more answers. Subscribe, because the next part changes everything. Before the fame, there was survival. Long before XXXTentacion became a name that could shake the internet, he was Jahseh Onfroy, a restless kid growing up in South Florida. His childhood was not polished, predictable, or easy. His family moved through instability, financial pressure, and the kind of emotional chaos that can force a young person to grow up without ever truly feeling grown. Cleopatra raised him while trying to keep her own life together. She worked, managed responsibilities, and watched her son struggle with anger, discipline, in a world that often seemed determined to misunderstand him. There were run-ins with authority, periods of juvenile detention, and moments when the future looked more dangerous than promising. Yet buried inside that turbulence was an instinct he could not silence. Jahseh was learning how to turn pain into sound. Music became more than entertainment. It became confession, confrontation, and escape. His early recordings were rough because his life was rough. The distortion, the shouting, the sudden switches into melody, and the exposed emotion were not calculated branding decisions. They sounded like a young man trying to translate feelings he did not know how to explain in ordinary conversation. Cleopatra saw the artist before the industry saw the opportunity. She witnessed the late nights, the uploads, and the small reactions that slowly became larger ones. Before there were contracts, charts, and millions of listeners, there was a mother watching her son find a language powerful enough to reach strangers. That history matters because the legacy she protects today did not begin in a boardroom. It began in a home marked by struggle, where a troubled child discovered that the very emotions pushing him toward destruction could also create something unforgettable. The same instability that made his path dangerous also gave his music the urgency listeners would later recognize within seconds. When pain became a movement, the rise of XXXTentacion did not look like a traditional music industry success story. There was no smooth introduction, no carefully controlled image, and no safe sound designed to please everyone. His music arrived like an emergency signal. It was loud, wounded, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. Look at Me became more than a viral record. It became a warning that a new generation of artists did not need permission from radio, labels, or old gatekeepers. Jahseh could scream over distorted production, then turn around and create fragile songs about depression, loneliness, and heartbreak That emotional whiplash made him feel honest to listeners who were tired of pretending they were fine. His album 17 exposed a softer and more vulnerable side. The songs were short, intimate, and emotionally direct. For millions of young fans, the music felt less like a performance and more like someone speaking from inside the same dark room. Then his 2018 album reached the top of the Billboard 200, confirming that the SoundCloud outsider had become one of the biggest artists in the country. For Cleopatra, the transformation happened almost overnight. The son she had worried about was suddenly a global figure. The same pain that once threatened to consume him had become the foundation of an enormous audience. Fame brought money and opportunity, but it also brought controversy, pressure, and people who wanted access to everything around him. She was only beginning to understand what his success could mean for their future when time ran out. The story had barely reached its first major victory, and then one afternoon turned that victory into a legacy. Nobody in the family had been prepared to manage. The bigger his voice became, the more fragile the world around him felt, because success was moving faster than anyone could build protection around it. The afternoon everything stopped. On June 18, Jahseh Onfroy left a motorcycle dealership in Deerfield Beach, Florida. He was 20 years old. Within minutes, an apparent robbery ended with the young artist fatally shot, his life collapsing. At the exact moment his career appeared ready to expand beyond every limit placed in front of him, the news traveled faster than grief could process it. Fans gathered. Social media exploded. Songs climbed the charts, and television reports repeated the same unbearable fact: XXXTentacion was gone. To the world, it was the shocking death of a controversial superstar. To Cleopatra, it was the death of her son. But public tragedy does not allow private mourning. Cameras appeared. Business questions arrived. Lawyers needed answers. Music already recorded had to be secured. Contracts had to be reviewed. People wanted statements, releases, explanations, and control. Cleopatra was expected to think clearly during the most disorienting moment of her life. That is the part many people miss. She did not receive a quiet period to collapse, disappear, or rebuild herself. The machinery around a famous artist kept moving. Even though the artist was no longer there to direct it, his catalog was still generating attention. His fans were demanding more. His business interests still existed. And somewhere inside that chaos was an unborn child whose future would become inseparable from every decision. The mother who had watched Jahseh fight his way out of instability suddenly became the person expected to protect everything he created. In one afternoon, Cleopatra's identity changed. She was still grieving, but now she was also the gatekeeper of a global legacy, and every gate had someone trying to get through it. There was no handbook for turning a mother's worst day into a responsible plan for an artist whose voice was still reaching new listeners. The child at the center of the estate. 7 months after Jahseh's death, his son, Gekyume Onfroy, was born. The timing carried a heartbreaking contradiction. A new life entered the family, but the father whose name and features he carried would never hold him. Hear his first words, or watch him grow. From that moment, the meaning of the estate changed. It was no longer only about preserving music or protecting a famous brand. It was about safeguarding a child's future. Public discussion often reduced the situation to one question: who received the money? But the deeper issue was control, responsibility, and what would remain for Gekyume when he became old enough to understand the scale of what his father left behind. Cleopatra's role was not simply to enjoy an inheritance. She became responsible for decisions involving recordings, royalties, licensing, marchandises, partnerships, and the long-term direction of the estate. The assets were tied to a future larger than her own. Every approval carried consequences for a grandson who could not yet speak for himself. That responsibility created an impossible standard. If she released unfinished music, critics could accuse the estate of exploiting Jahseh. If she held music back, fans could claim she was hiding his work. If she accepted a business opportunity, people questioned the motive. If she rejected one, Others questioned the strategy. And behind all of those public debates was a grandmother watching Gekyume grow into a living reminder of the son she lost. Loving that child meant protecting him from the same industry that had turned his father's pain into a worldwide business. It also meant building a record of decisions that he might one day examine for himself. The most valuable thing she could preserve was not a number on a financial statement, but the freedom for Gekyume to decide what his father's legacy would mean to him, a legacy surrounded by courtrooms. The music was only one battlefield. Almost immediately, the estate became surrounded by disputes involving family relationships, alleged inheritance rights, business interests, credits, and royalties. Court filings turned private tension into public spectacle, and Cleopatra became the name attached to nearly every conflict. Some relatives challenged how the estate was being handled. Claims were made about beneficiary status, transfers, and who should receive a share. Cleopatra disputed those claims and maintained that the estate had been structured around Jahseh's legal heir. The details became complicated, but the emotional reality was simple. Family grief had become family litigation. Then came disputes from the music side. Producers and collaborators questioned credits, payment, and ownership connected to records that had helped build XXXTentacion's career. These arguments were not unusual in the music business, but death made them far more explosive. Jahseh could no longer sit in a room, explain an agreement, settle a misunderstanding, or defend a decision. Every unresolved issue landed on the people managing what remained. For Cleopatra, each case carried two risks. The first was financial. The second was reputational. Even an allegation could spread online, as if it were a final judgment. Fans chose sides without reading filings. Headlines compressed complicated disputes into a few emotional words. Her motives were debated by people who had never met her. That is why managing the estate became more than accounting. It became a constant defense of intent. She had to prove that protecting assets was not the same as taking them, that making decisions was not the same as controlling her son, and that every courtroom fight consumed time she could never use to simply remember him in peace. Every legal response forced her to speak as an executive while feeling the pain of a mother. That collision between business and grief never gave her room to breathe, raising a boy inside a global memory. Gekyume is not growing up with an ordinary family history. His father is present everywhere and physically nowhere. He can hear Jahseh's voice on demand, watch interviews, see performances, read arguments, and find millions of strangers describing what his father meant to them. Yet none of those people can give him the private relationship he lost before birth. That makes Cleopatra's role deeply personal. She is not only protecting music for an audience, she is helping preserve a complete picture of Jahseh for his son. Not a perfect picture, and not a version designed only for praise, but a human one that includes talent, pain, mistakes, growth, contradiction, and love. One day, Gekyume will be old enough to search his father's name without anyone guiding him. He will encounter devotion from fans, criticism from others, court records, documentaries, old videos, rumors, and stories repeated so often that they may feel like facts. Preparing him for that moment may be the most important legacy decision Cleopatra makes. Every release becomes part of the archive he will inherit. Every foundation project becomes evidence of how the family chose to direct Jahseh's influence. Every legal battle becomes part of a history he may eventually question. Cleopatra knows that one day, her grandson may ask whether the adults around him protected his father's work with care. There is also a quieter emotional burden. In Gekyume's expressions, relatives and fans often see traces of Jahseh. For Cleopatra, those similarities may bring joy and pain at the same time. She gets to love her grandson completely while facing constant reminders of the son who should have been standing beside him. Protecting Gekyume, therefore, means more than protecting money. It means protecting his right to meet his father through truth rather than through the loudest version of the internet. Turning grief into work that lives. Cleopatra could not change what happened to Jahseh, but she could influence what happened in his name. That became the purpose behind the XXXTentacion Foundation and the community work connected to his legacy. Near the end of his life, Jahseh had increasingly spoken about mental health. Young people, generosity, and the desire to become something more constructive than the controversy surrounding him. Those intentions were unfinished. Just like parts of his music, Cleopatra took that direction and helped turn it into visible action. The foundation has been associated with youth support, education, community assistance, mental health awareness, and charitable projects. Computers were provided to students in Jamaica, connecting Jahseh's legacy to his family's roots. Other efforts sought to place his name on opportunities for children who might recognize something of their own struggles in his story. That work matters because a posthumous legacy can easily become trapped inside products. New releases, marchandises, anniversary campaigns, and streaming milestones can keep a name profitable without making it meaningful. Community projects offer a different measurement. Instead of asking only how many times a song was played, they ask whether the influence helped someone who was still alive. For Cleopatra, the work also gives grief a direction. It does not erase the loss, but it turns memory into movement. A donated computer, a supported student, or a completed community project cannot bring Jahseh home, but each one creates proof that his story did not end only with violence. Controversy, or unfinished potential. The painful truth is that every positive achievement still carries his absence. She can build in his honor, but she cannot celebrate with him. That is the contradiction at the center of everything she does. Her work shows how love can survive by changing form. It becomes a classroom, an opportunity, a protected recording, or a future placed into the hands of a child. Why the sadness never leaves. From the outside, Cleopatra Bernard appears to have many things people associate with security: property, influence, a famous family name, business control, and a grandson she loves. That is why describing her life as sad can sound exaggerated. But sadness is not always the absence of success. Sometimes, it is the inability to share success with the person who made it meaningful. Every milestone forces two emotions into the same moment. A song reaches another billion streams, and Jahseh is not there. A foundation project is completed, and Jahseh is not there. Gekyume grows older, asks new questions, or resembles his father in a new way, and Jahseh is still not there. The legacy keeps expanding while the empty space beside it never changes. Most grieving people eventually create some distance from the daily source of their pain. Cleopatra cannot. Her son's name is her work. His voice is part of her business. His birthday, his death, his unfinished music, his fans, and his legal history return in cycles that never truly stop. Love and responsibility keep her connected to the exact wound she is expected to manage professionally. Justice in the criminal case may have brought accountability, but accountability is not peace. Money can protect a family, but it cannot restore a family. Public admiration can honor a son, but it cannot give his mother one more private conversation with him. That is why Cleopatra's life is heavier than the headlines suggest. She is not simply maintaining an artist's catalog. She is standing between Jahseh's memory and every force that could distort, divide, or commercialize it without care. And as Gekyume grows closer to the day when he will understand everything, the final question becomes unavoidable. What does it really take to protect a legacy without losing yourself inside it? The real cost of protecting a legacy. The story of Cleopatra Bernard reveals a truth the music industry rarely discusses. Honestly, preserving a legacy is not the same as preserving a person. A catalog can be protected, royalties can be collected, contracts can be challenged, recordings can be restored, and a famous name can remain visible for generations. But none of those things can replace the human being at the center of it all. Strategically, Cleopatra's greatest challenge is balance. She must protect Gekyume's financial future without allowing the estate to become defined only by money. She must give fans access to Jahseh's work without releasing material that feels incomplete or disrespectful. She must defend the estate in court without letting legal conflict become the entire story. And she must preserve his influence while acknowledging that his life contained contradictions, mistakes, pain, and attempts at growth. The lesson is bigger than one family. Artists should build clear plans while they are alive. Ownership, credits, wills, trusts, unreleased music, and family responsibilities should never be left to confusion. When those decisions are delayed, grief becomes mixed with business, and the people left behind are forced to negotiate while emotionally broken. There's also a lesson for fans. Loving an artist does not give the public ownership over the artist's family. Questions are fair. Accountability is fair. Cruelty, harassment, and instant judgment are not. The people managing a legacy may make imperfect decisions, but they are often making them under pressure. Most outsiders will never understand. For families facing loss, the most humane path is not endless conflict. It is transparency, communication, legal preparation, and respect for the children, whose futures are affected by every argument. No amount of money is worth destroying the remaining family around it. Cleopatra's story is ultimately not about winning every dispute. It is about refusing to let grief become the final chapter. She turned pain into responsibility, responsibility into protection, and protection into something that may one day help Gekyume understand the father he never had the chance to know. Do you believe Cleopatra has protected XXXTentacion's legacy with care, or should the estate take a different direction? Share your opinion respectfully in the comments. Like this video, send it to another hip-hop fan, and subscribe for more stories that go beyond the headlines and into the human truth behind the music.